you can make short records.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, yeah. His mom is a musician.
Hi, how are you? Good, I haven't seen you forever. How are you doing?
Oh, great. I love
Great.
your dress. I love the color.
Yes, too. See, I'm feeling bad and her flowers, but she doesn't.
That's okay. He's gonna have some flowers. But yeah, so my mom, she's a organist, and his dad is a mathematician. So he's like, no, I'm a musician, also organist. Okay. Well, that's nice. Well, and then he has a music suggestion and appreciates you singing and all of that. So they're just like, you sing, and I'm like, you're not understanding.
Yeah.
And how is life?
It's
Yeah.
very, like, not well done.
There he is.
Yes.
Oh, he's cute. Yeah, he. Oh, yeah, that's true. Valentine. Yes, Valentine. Yes, yeah, I was never personally know more or less. Yes, he's very quiet. That's why you probably forgot.
Oh, you've heard most of it. I got you here.
I saw some of the Facebook comments. That's never to how she's rolling one. It's a crazy one. She knows that. And I told her today, and she's like, I don't know which one was this crazy.
Someone else.
Because I'm so bored.
Yeah, okay.
So no, here's Jada joking. It's good to balance out. Because like it's different. The more
Something.
the more introverted.
Oh, yeah.
I actually, since I took this photo, I have a little bit more
Bring him out a little bit of the shell.
Yeah, it's been a long process.
It looks
We've
just
almost
like
been
the
here.
top of
But it's
the
been,
sun.
Yeah.
Baby
Yeah.
steps.
I'm a patient person.
More people will call it.
Yeah.
Just do
Just
I mean, it's not. I mean, I was looking through it, I thought the whole thing, I was looking through the B section.
Because we need Dr. James Well, they're not picking up the Dr. Overcome and then
I like so you always said
Tile.
I criticize it.
I know, seems
But yeah, I don't like.
Yeah, no, I was trying to get out here. But in Chicago, I was close to.
Programs are right here.
So,
I don't put them up there because
it's
then
not like a hard.
Yeah.
So you're just.
It's even waking up the
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like,
So I didn't start Chicago.
this room actually still has to be.
I didn't realize how much.
Yeah,
it was.
I think.
You're
So
gonna-
that actually, except.
And I'm like, look how much shit.
But no, I thought basically, oh my
She's
God.
like,
It's like a jet flow, right?
and like, exactly.
All the time, yeah. Because he expects more.
Well,
But yeah, so that was, I realized I compared to Dana's mom. She was born in Indiana. So she likes desert, she likes succulent plants, and I'm like, this is
Great though.
Well, the good thing about living in the back area is that you learn to see
well, good, my hair. It's just like, and then I have a car, so it's not
Yeah,
really
like necessary.
because they keep me somewhere to back.
How you been? How you been? Oh yeah, same. Yeah. That time of the year, right?
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. Almost done now, though.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are you singing?
I am.
Oh, nice, awesome. Toy, toy, toy.
Oh, how did your recital go yesterday? I wasn't able to.
Oh no, don't worry about it. You know, it's like you can watch it online, so
Oh.
it's all it's all good.
What did you sing?
Oh hey, hey, thanks for coming yesterday. That was sweet. Oh, thank you.
Listen, I was so in and out today, I didn't get a chance to even chit chat with you.
Oh man.
I saw you working, I said, he's busy. Was it okay?
It was okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I made my first like quote, and sent it to a client. Yeah.
No big deal, huh?
Yeah, it's getting there. You know.
Good. My your
Gradual.
voice was so angelic, it was
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Listen,
I made eye contact. Did you see it? Yeah, of course I saw it.
I looked at her, first I was smelling those, I was like, I better stop smelling, because you were kind of like in the moment. I didn't
No,
get to go
no,
like
no.
back and forth or something.
Oh no. Feel free to interact. It makes the performance better. So
I kid you not, I was blown away before you first saw us. Like, wow, this is incredible.
Thank you.
So blessed, so gifted, that's amazing. Pictures of Valentine.
But yeah, for a time, I had the person do it.
So you're gonna record it?
It was like
Live stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just.
Okay, so on YouTube?
Yeah. It's probably one of the best functions.
How did you get that? Is this what you had last night?
Yeah. That's what I had. Yeah.
You got it.
And your voice.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Hey, by the way, where are you gonna be standing? Where are you gonna be standing? Here? Okay, so I'll move it like.
And then the singer.
Yeah, and I couldn't get people to want music. Like, all right, well, they already hear me, I can start listening to get it started. So then I get company, and they come over and then they make lists. And how to get there, all that good stuff. And so it's like, here's the rate to get you the real piano teacher. And then we said, it was good way to start.
All right, so we're gonna start. First of all, thank you everyone for being here for my lecture recital on how to develop and improve vocal agility of light lyric colorature in the specific French repertoire of the opera comique genre. this is an overview of today's lecture. I will start introducing why I choose this topic, and then I will provide a definition of the opera comic genre, which is often mistaken. And I will explain a bit how it got created, and then we will explore musical and theatrical characteristics of the opera comic through some singing. So today we're going to sing only part of the song because most of them are like more than 7 minutes. And I will explain a bit why it got declined. This is why my title is saying neglected, because the genre was very popular in the 19th century, and from the early 20th century it completely disappeared from the stage. And then we will move to vocal pedagogy, where I will introduce 3 methods to work on vocal agility, 2 by the 19th century French pedagogue Recital, and 1 by Adam Kirkpatrick that I had the pleasure to interview during this project. And then I will briefly show you how to apply both methods on the short coloratura passage that you will listen to today, and then we will conclude this lecture. So the reason for my topic, there is 3 different. The first one being the repetitive selection of aria from light lyric soprano coloratura in the whole studio. I sat in a lot of competition in France and in America, and I have to admit that I listened to too much Juliet Waltz. And then sometimes Lacme, but mostly Juliet Waltz. So but like since I really love this repertoire, and I know it because it's not that popular in France actually, I was like, why don't I try to provide more resources of repertoire for light courses, and especially coloratura. And then the second reason is the definition of the opera comic. When I advise my friends to look at this repertoire, they answer me, but I don't like comedy. And I'm like, but this is not a comedy. And the third one is pedagogy. Of course, as I intend to become a voice pedagogue and a voice researcher, I really wanted to add a voice pedagogy component in my research, and agility made sense because we are talking about coloratura today. So, what is the definition of the opera comic genre? It's actually very easy. This is an opera in which song and aria alternate with spoken dialogue and not recitative. And that's pretty much it. But I do understand the confusion with comedy, because the word comic means comical, but it's because of the history. At the origin of the genre, opera comic plots were actually satirical and humoristic, but it quickly moved to a genre that approached different subject matter. So in the end, the opera comic is really not a comedy. The repertoire of the opera comic. So the opera comic always favored live voice, at least until 1874. The reason why I couldn't find really an evidence. So in my documents, I made some suggestions, and I do think that the most important one is the fact that in the 19th century, most of the famous opera singers were live voices, so I put like 4 of them there. Right. I really, really enjoyed when I read literature from this book, Opera Comique, a source book by Robert Ignatius Letelier, when he states a very important difference between the opera comique and the opera. He states that in the opera comique we have only 1 lead role, and this is often a light soprano. Whereas in the opera, there is 2 lead roles, which are often 2 full lyric, 1 coloratura and 1 lyric, 1 dramatic. And then he had that the hero, so the tenor, in opera comique is often associated with light voices. So clearly, if you have a light voice, I would definitely recommend you to look at this repertoire because you might find 1,000 ideas. A couple words about the creation of the genre. So around the 1690s, the King, Louis XIV, owned 3 companies: the opera, the Comédie Italienne, and the Comédie Française. But there were some singers and actors that were not part of those companies, but they still wanted to perform. So they decided to do it, even if they didn't receive that privilege from the king. So they decided to create their own theater outside in the fairs in Paris, in which they would perform parody of the shows performed by the Comédie Italienne, the Comédie Française, and the opera. And then what happened? Audience loved it. So they start leaving the theater of the king troops to come to see the opera comic at the fairs. So the king did everything he could to stop them, but he failed. So he decided to approve them as a company, and then Catherine Baron, in 1714, which was a very famous entrepreneur, theater entrepreneur, decided to call the genre opera comique in order to make a difference with the opera. And the following year, we performed the first official opera comique at the fairs, Télémaque by Le Sage. But it is much later, in 1762, that the opera comique merged with the Comédie Italienne in order to share the theater, in order to perform. But they really wanted the theater. So in 1783, we actually built the Salle Favart, which is known today as the Théâtre National de l'Opéra Comique de Paris, and it is still active today. There is an opera studio there, actually. This is a picture of it. All right, let's explore the musical and theatrical characteristics of the genre comique of singing. So today, you will not listen to early opera comique song or aria because they're useless. Why they are useless? Because at the time, no composer wanted to compose for the genre, and also the singer and the actor, they wanted the audience to sing with them, so they choose popular vaudeville. So, first piece of today is from Zémie et Azor, which is an opera comique by André Gretry. André Gretry was a Belgian composer, very, very famous in Paris at the time, and he was the most influential and popular 18th century opera comique composer. So this is an ariette. So an ariette is not a short aria. Some people think that, but no. An ariette is an aria, light and bright in style. So usually perfect for light voices. The character here is Zemir. And, you know, Gretry loved Italian music. So he was the most, like, one of the only opera comique composer to really imitate the Italian. This is why this ariette is in da capo form. And the opera was inspired from the fairy tale of the Beauty and the Beast that was written a couple years ago. So on the program note, I put you can read the context of the song. So a lot of people think that coloratura arias sometimes are not interesting because it's just a display of virtuosity, but I don't think so, because every coloratura figure has a meaning, you know. So here you have like a passage, coloratura passage of the aria, and as you see, very little like gruppetto and descending line. Those actually musically paint the flirting attitude of the character, because she is falling in love with the beast at the time. So she's trying to seduce him. And so today, Dr. Elliott with Katie will perform the repeat of the section A. complicated Italian. But French opera comic composer were still trying to find out their musical identity. So they were still trying to borrow from other countries. And so here we have a bolero, which is a Spanish dance. It is a couplet in strophic form. Opera comic composers, they were so obsessed with form. So from in the early 19th century, they mostly used strophic form. So in this bolero, we have a lot of Spanish elements, musical elements, and this paved the way of the genre to the exoticist movement, which later will be confirmed with the most famous opera comic, which was coming by Bizet. So here's a coloratura passage, very short, you see, that's all, which that you have in the area, and this is because we all hate choosing coloratura, but of course he felt he was obligated because the lead role at the time for the opera comic was a light soprano. So today this is soprano coloratura Claudia Affan with Katie that will perform for us this bolero. Sometimes like upset, feeling rage, and sometimes the music follows. But in the opera comique, composer they decide to support the pain felt by the character, but all the time with cute light walls on their very humoristic staging idea. So, and why they did that? Simply to retain the element of lightness that a light aria needs. So, the first bad aria today is from Le Domino Noir by Auber, which is actually pretty famous for Berkeley. The character is Angèle. So, here we are in a rondo form from 1830s. Opera composers like always use the rondo form because they wanted for the soprano to have the possibility to ornament by themselves and show as much as virtuosity they can. So here, the coloratura figure for me, they are the most important. There is different ones, but those are chromatic run. They are descending chromatic run, and they are actually describing the pain felt by the character. She's actually crying because she's about to become an abbess, but she realized that she fell in love with a man. So that's kind of like a problem. And so she's very upset, and what is very interesting is that the piano and the orchestra and the singing is actually a very, very, very nice and light waltz. So I will perform the third rondo and the coda. And we are in a run of form. So here's a character has been abandoned the day of her wedding by the groom, so pretty upsetting situation. And so she decided at night to go for a walk in a forest, and she started to have hallucination, kind of like sudden mental issues. And the moon reflects the shadow in the forest, and she's convinced that this is a person. So she starts having a dialogue with her shadow. And so the coloratura figures serve as, like, you know, depicting the dialogue between the character and the shadow. So here, this is the character singing. And this, in the pianissimo dynamic, is supposed to be the shadow, but actually it's the character herself that is singing, but she does not really realize it. So she's kind of like, I read some research in my documents, so people say that she's playing the ventriloquist. And I like that. So today we go now watch actually a scene from an excerpt of the scene. It was in 2002 in France, and this is Isabelle Philippe. She's a very, very famous soprano in France. All right. Alright, so very interesting mad eye. Alright, Colorado soprano in birds. Yes, because in the 19th century in Paris, a Colorado soprano is a star. She's at the top, and everyone is buying tickets to come to listen to the soprano Colorado in front of the stage. So, we wanted to compose for coloratura soprano. And this means including more coloratura figure. So, opera comic composer, they had an idea to include dialogue with birds. Alright, so the first bird song today is Au bord du chemin from Massé, Les Noces de Jamais. So, this is a very, very, very hard aria. I cannot recommend this piece for beginner because there's a lot of challenging coloratura figure to sing. So we are in a room of four still, and clearly the coloratura serves as a dialogue between the nightingale and the character. So here is a dialogue between the nightingale, orchestral flutes, and the singer. So here's a nightingale and a singer. And what is very challenging is that the singer needs to really match what the flute is doing. So today I will perform this dialogue with Kelly, who will be the nightingale. because Gounod composed two versions, one with 5 acts and recitative, and one with 3 acts and spoken dialogue. So it can be considered as both. So this is in a rondo form, and this aria actually does not exist anymore in a current performance today because this is an aria that was requested by Caroline Carvalho at the time, who was a very famous 19th century coloratura and poet. And Gounod composed coloratura aria that were very more dark, and then that required a much more bigger voice. And she received so much bad critiques about her performance of them. So she went to see Gounod and said, listen, I want good critique on my performance, so please introduce an aria that fits my voice. And he composed this little aria. But today, it is mostly used for competition or audition, like concert purpose, but it's not anymore sung in the opera. So here, we need a self-ornamentation of the rondo, but it's optional. But here, we really need it, otherwise the aria can be very boring. And the coloratura figure are mostly an expression of love, because there is a dialogue with the bird, but the bird is not answering. So it's mostly Mireille singing to a swallow to say, go to send this love message to the one I love. So here I suggest articulation of rondo ornamentation. Here I put some legato, staccato, and then I change the rhythm. So today, Emily Clemens will perform for us this aria, and I want you to pay attention on how she actually changed the ornamentation. Actually, you know, in the 19th century, every genre was supposed to perform in their own theater. So at the Salfa Bar, we were playing opera comique at the opera. And then Napoleon decided to pass a new rule named the freedom of the theaters. So every theater could play any genre, any language. So this motivated actually composer to experiment transforming the opera comique, spoken dialogue into recitative, and Bruno wrote this. So, in 1871, we performed the first opera comique with recitative in the South of France. And then another trajectory of why the opera comique declined in its original form is with Bizet, who composed Carmen, and then you change, you replace the light soprano ingenue that is the first line, for femme fatale, or the full lyric in mezzo. And so that gives even more idea of the opera comique composer to actually deviate from the original form. And so what happened is that composers decided to experiment different stuff. So we have Massenet with Manon, which is an opera comique, who creates the melodrama. So they are like kind of mixed between recitative and spoken dialogue. And then of course another reason of the decline was the operetta. Why is the operetta? Because as I explained earlier, the opera comique is a genre that uses spoken dialogue, and people do really love that. So they say, oh, it's not only too restful from the musical moments, and Offenbach with Hervé, so the primary creator of the opera, they were so successful at the time. So opera comique traditionalists, they actually left the opera comique theater to go to watch opera. And so this is how the genre declined. We kept composing some, but we clearly stopped performing them. Only the most famous one, Carmen, in which the recitative has been actually recomposed, spoken dialogue that has been recomposed in recitative after he died. And then, of course, Romeo and Juliet that is now performed with recitative, Lakme, and then Manon with the melodrama. Vocal agility. So let's move to vocal pedagogy. So, I wanted to introduce this part of the lecture with a quote that I completely disagree with. This is from Mancini, from Giovanni Giambattista Mancini, the soprano Recital of the 18th century, who was very, very, very amazing pedagogue. So as you see, if you read this quote, you think that vocal agility was part of a natural talent. And he thought that if you don't have it naturally, you will never get it. So you can spend hours in practice room, you will waste your time. All right. And this is how I answer Mr. Mancini, because I do think that agility means flexibility. This is a synonym of it. And if your voice is not flexible, then it can be detrimental, and you may not have a long-term healthy singing. And since we are improving breathing technique, laryngeal flexibility, switching of registers, I do think that we can improve vocal agility. And this for every voice, not only coloratura. And I love that you say that it's a gift of nature, because I think we all know that singing is not natural. If it was, why would we spend like half an hour making research about it, right? So if singing is not natural, why would vocal agility be, right? All right, so the technical component of good vocal agility is all of this family that singers actually know and practice every day. We need a good intonation, flexibility in all the voice. Onset and release must be clean and short, good breath support, and of course the larynx need to be flexible, which is very important that the larynx is flexible in order to sing faster. And then we need the jaw and the tongue to be very relaxed and an open throat. So what is vocal agility in the repertoire? It's all of this. We're going to fast run, this vocal agility, we're going to chromatic run, different like legato with staccato. This is part of vocal agility, and of course for coloratura soprano, it's involved to flageolet register known as the whistle, so in order to sing very high. So the first pedagogue is Laurenti Damoro. She was French, and she was actually one of the most famous soprano coloratura at the time, and she created a lot of roles for the opera comique. And she was also a teacher at the Conservatoire de Paris, and she published a method de chant in 1849. And today we will discuss two of her methods. First, is the chromatic run. So I didn't want to make you guys sing the exercise today, so Ariana will sing them. All right. So we're gonna do let's see. We're gonna play two exercise chromatic run from the Moro method. As you see, very similar, but not quite. Here, she allows the singer to breathe. And as you see here, there is an accent. So she wants this note to be supported and vibrated. And what she means by that she simply means for the breath to be engaged right away. And then, of course, the legato is to avoid the surarticulation, like the over-articulation of each note.
It's just because it's easier to keep going than to stop and need to do the onset again, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with that. All right, and then the second technique to be discussed today D'Amour is a cocotte. So the cocotte is a French word. It's a French term that D'Amour used to describe his staccato technique. I don't really know why she did that, but a cocotte is a nickname used in French to describe a girl. So I do think that she used that to explain that this is direct, mostly primarily for female singing. So here is the cocotte exercise, as you see. So D'Amour, she recommends to not overdose the cocotte. So if you do too much staccato, and it can be detrimental because it's very hard to do, accurately. And then, of course, we can see the accent again that she suggests to support and vibrate. So why it is here and not here? Because this long is longer, and this note is longer in duration, and so that prepared the beat that is coming up. All right, and each cocotte will be clear and short. Let's just do that. Articulation. So going to legato, as you see here, to staccato. So by this, Cindy D'Amour, she simply explained that what is important when you do staccato is to, even if you re-articulate sound, you should not stop the energy of the breath. The airflow must remain constant and steady. So doing legato before, legato figure before helps the staccato to remain steady. All right. love this interview. I'm literally a fan of this method. So it was a former voice professor. He's not teaching anymore voice, and he contributes so much for the book, and I really feel by publishing, I think, like 8 articles in that journal. He also creates some voice app. So bouncy breath articulation, his method in order to achieve a correct choreography singing, also how to sing fast run by trying to avoid any over articulation in the throat. So, as you see, as he explained, singer maintain an uninterrupted airflow through the glottis while changing the current of the airflow with supple rhythmic pulse of the respiratory muscle. Clearly what he explained is to do a bit like this. I do this movement of the body here in the epigastric region when you sing. So clearly all of the articulation of each note must be here instead of here. So, Ariana will come back. He creates 3 different steps to work on this method. So the first one is with no tone, no singing. So, Ariana, please take a breath and then count 8 beats in your mind on the consonant S.
Okay.
Amazing. Can you do that again? And you add an accent here with your epigastric. Right? So you can hear she's bouncing the breath. And then step 2, adding 1 tone. So, which vowel do you want?
It's an
Okay. And pitch? Let's do A. Alright. So Ariana will now sustain the R on an A4 for 8 counts with an accent on each beat. So, do you see like the wave that is created in the sound? It's like, as I said, it's like similar to singing on a bumpy road. So it's not, I want to say, it's not that pretty, but that's the feeling that singer must get when they try to sing this. And he adds also that singer must not try to vibrate. So a lot of people disagree with that because when we sing, we need to spin, we need to vibrate. But if we don't do this, we can, if we try to vibrate, we can impair the movement that Dr. Kirkpatrick wants us to reach. And then the step 3 is to add a melody. So Dr. Kirkpatrick never writes an exercise, but I asked him if I could create an exercise based on his method, and he said, sure, no problem. So as you see here, you have a 5 scale, ascending and descending, and then the legato is to remind the singer that they should not over-articulate enough. And then those are not accent, they are my, like, I want to say, my psychological tool to remind the singer that each note melody bounces. Alright? Let's read Ariana. That I demonstrate with Ariana, and up you apply them. So what I did is that my chromatic rhythm of my aria, actually now I have a rest, so I can divide my chromaticisms. accent here to remind me that I have an in my breath to re-energize on this specific note, and then of course the legato to avoid over-articulation of the pitch. And then I do the same without breath. And then how to apply the cocotte. So this is her exercise, as in down the road. You have the legato going to the staccato, and then you have the coloratura passage of the near aria. And as you see, Dr. Elliott sang it earlier, you have legato here and staccato. So you can definitely think about this method and apply it. And think that if there is a legato here, going to staccato here will be clear, short, and with an energetic airflow. And then how to apply Dr. Kilpatrick? Simply, you take ombre légère that you heard in the video, passage, the dialogue of the shadow, and you have the free step. So you have the first one, I took only the rhythm of it, and I had the consonant S. And then I do the same with the first note of the phrase and the vowel A, and then I sing the passage with my little dash, reminding me to think about the bouncy breath articulation. And then to conclude this lecture, I want to say that the genre, the opera comic genre should be more considerate in music history, in singing. And then the likelihood coloratura soprano is actually at the center of this repertoire, so if you are likely coloratura or any light voice, you must look at this repertoire. And then as you see, there is a huge connection between both aria and the practice of vocal agility, so you can use them to practice. And then of course vocal agility is not a natural talent, so agility is definitely wrong in my opinion. And then vocal agility method from the 19th century and 20th century are actually 21st century, like actually kind of like the same. You know, they want to reach the same goal, singing on a airflow and avoiding over-articulation in the throat. And I do not recommend singing this repertoire for overcasting because we do play standard repertoire in a role today, and we want to listen to you in this kind of repertoire so we can project your voice in a role. But I do recommend it for practice purposes because those are great, and competition because they do show a lot. Question?
Did you look my direction?
Yeah.
I have two questions from Dr. James.
Yes.
Okay. Question one. Is there a particular reason that you're playing in unison with Ariana on the exercises? What might you do as an alternative to playing continuously with students?
Oh, no, I think it's just my teaching style.
Just your teaching.
Yes, that's the answer I would say. But yeah, I should. No, and also I think I wanted Ariana to feel, sometimes when I sing really the full exercise with students, they have a tendency to follow what the piano do, and they use some kind of legato. So, but yeah, I should agree.
And then her second question, is the bounce intentionally epigastric? Why or why not?
Well, he said that, and I want to agree because when there is an action here, you definitely feel your ribcage opening. And I learned when I was in NYU, like pedagogy class, that my teacher says when you breathe, you don't feel your diaphragm because you cannot control it, but you can actually feel it moving because of this going forward and backward. So I do think that you mentioned the gastric area for that reason. Thank you, Dr. That's my question.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So when you're doing the bouncy breath, are you pulsing out or in or back and forth?
It's not very, it's not supposed to be like, it's very subtle as he explained, and it has to be very like a little movement here. You know, like the little dog?
Right.
This is just IV. If you do that, and you put two fingers here, you feel that this is actually walking, and actually not here, not the lower abdominal, because we don't want to, we don't want this. We need to sing like very fast coloratura run, and also he said that we must complete the wobble feeling, so just like to let go feeling. So we stay. Okay, thank you. Sure. Yes.
Does it? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Does it work for other voice types like, leggero, tenor? Yeah.
You don't need it for any coloratura.
Okay.
I just simply apply it, but it works for me. And not only for just coloratura books, you have the written bits that have coloratura
Right.
that sometimes. So I mean, it works for everything.
I've got a couple questions, but one, when you're talking about breathing and demonstrating that type of bouncy breath, all the performances are excellent tonight. Did you happen to ask the singers what they might be experiencing when they're singing this repertoire in terms of the breath sensation?
So I have to admit that I mostly met with Claudia, but because of time managing and stuff. But that's interesting because my dad asked me the same question before the lecture. He said that they really, when they were walking on the repertoire, you asked them to apply this, and I want to answer even no. I just wanted, the reason why I choose them to sing it was mostly because I know this repertoire, and also I want to encourage American singers to use it. So I just wanted them to have an experience. But yeah, that's an experiment I wish I could.
Yeah, it could be
But
interesting.
Ayana was the one to apply. She told me that she actually applied on some of her aria, and she said it's interesting. So
I had another question about sort of dates that you mentioned in the beginning part of the presentation. You talked about opera comique in the you said 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, and then there's a decline in the 19th century. So was there opera comique then in the 20th century, and is there opera comique in the 21st century?
there is some opera comique actually that have been composed until 1972, but we never performed them. So I know that because my advisor in my musicology, master musicology, was a specialist of opera comique. So when I say I think the genre declined, he's like, no, you did not. So it's kind of but it did decline, and every musicologist agreed that it did decline because we were buying tickets to see what? Opera comique, and then from the moment only grand opera. So, and then of course, Wagner and all of the neoclassicism movement also came in. So it faded away. But now it's mostly amateur singer that sing opera comique. Why, I don't know. But it's like operetta. I think it's beautiful. I think it's very hard. And in France, it's mostly amateur company that sing operetta and opera comique. So, but yeah, they always been really opera comique. But when I say it's declining, is that it was so important. It was so popular, and it faded away very quickly.
I just have one more question. So you're talking about relaxed jaw and open throat. What is an open throat?
Well, there is different, there's actually different thought about that. And some people think that, you have to bite an apple to raise a soft palate, and so your throat is open. And then, Dr. Jones will be mad at me. I love the technique of Dr. Miller when he talks about smelling the roses. So you just inspire like that, and your throat is open. But, every singer has their own technique. But I don't know if your question was that.
Well, I'm just wondering if you were to work with a student and say, I'd like you to sing with an open throat and a relaxed jaw, what that would elicit from the student.
Well, definitely raising the soft palate, and then take a breath, and sense the voice, and it definitely gets opening to reach the resonance. So that's it. But I will teach the inhaling at first. I know that some teachers are like, no, inhaling, that's not good. But sometimes I think it's good to start a bit with inhale like this, to open the throat, in my opinion.
Dr. James says, hey now.
Yep. What is the difference between operetta and opera comique if they both have spoken dialogue?
It's a great question. So the difference is mostly the plot and also the character. Because yes, so most of the soprano are light. I mean, opera, sometimes mezzo, back, but you have to know that that operetta actually was born from opera comique because Hervé, so Florent Roger, is a creator, and Offenbach loved opera comique, but they never succeed to compose a correct opera comique to be performed. So they went to the operetta. So the difference is really the plot. The operetta is actually comical. In France, if you go to England and Germany, it is comical, but it's very sentimental also. So it's mostly comical. And then if you choose Offenbach, it's also very erotic and sexual, which is opera comique.
So how would you help like someone that has like a heavier voice and generally when they try to do coloratura, they just do glottal attacks, like to learn to do the that I can't. You like do this like no.
Well, you know, in this repertoire, the opera comique with Bruno, we stopped composing both that were much more heavier for me. Even if you take Manon, I do not repeat the tab, for me it's much bigger than two others. So that's a great question. There is also like a change in voice. In my document, I read a quote of the French musicologist, very mad, explaining that we definitely motivated blind voice to sing bigger and to overdub their voice. But when you talk about articulation of a film, I think that there is some type of coloratura that use that, Rossini, for example. But I don't think it's really. Some people think, like Puccini, that because you have a light voice, it's natural to move. But I disagree with that. I also talked to a teacher that I interviewed, Stephanie Smith, who actually said that he disagreed also that it's not only light voice that should sing fast, but because there is less mass in their tissue, in the vocal folds, the vocal folds will be more flexible in moving. So that maybe is the only reason why light voice usually singing fast. But I would say that I would apply it as the exact same thing. But the power of the voice or the color of the voice will simply be different. And then if they have a tendency of over-articulate, what I will do is, because for me it is a very over-adduction phonation if you do that, in my taste. So I will use the reverse and add a bit of a breathy sound on the onset to relax that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Well, because it's very generic, but it's just like, yeah, like, I think everyone should work on flexibility, like you're saying, and even if, like, even if you can't sing as fast as someone who has a lighter voice, you'll still be able to learn from that, so. Yes.
Dr. James, all caps, heavier voices have to do coloratura too, or exclamation mark.
Awesome job. Yes.
Damn.
And I want to say thank you to my teacher because she has been helping me a lot. You know, I never really studied with a woman because I was scared. Sometimes I should not study with people who have the same voice, you know. It's not very efficient and I really love it. I know I have so much work to do still, but you make me improve so much and you love me and you're amazing. And if one day I became who you are, I would be lucky. I was supposed to study with you. I think it turned out great. Because you're such a great associate dean. I'm so glad you made it. I'm so glad, and I'm so happy you're part of my committee because I know you're a pedagogue. You're so talented. I love you, boy. You have such a great personality. You're such a human being. And I kind of wish we could see you more in a good department.
I'm hiding away in the PH.
I'm so happy for you. And thank you for being part of that. And then Dr. James, I don't know if she's watching, but
She's right there. She's around.
right there. Yeah, Dr. James. As I told you, you're such a model for me. If one day I can be like you, a mom, an amazing singer, an amazing pedagogue. You are awesome, and thank you for being part of my committee. You taught me so much. Like your pedagogy classes, like just rock. We don't have a pedagogy program here at UNLV, but we should because you're just so good, and it means so much that you're here virtually with us today, and you were
Crying
part of my
emoji.
committee, so thank you. And then my boss from the student union, thank you so much. I said I will have more for you because you know, without this job, maybe I could not do this doctorate. This is true, and so you're awesome, and I love you so much, and I will miss you. I'm glad to get to work with Michael now. And for all my friends, I love you so much. All I know some are watching the streaming, like Christina Children, I love you. Alex Price, I love you. And thank you so much for coming. It means the world. My parents flew from France. Yeah. My boyfriend Ben that I love. So.
Viva UNLV!
Wow.
Ooh.